Hey guys, my name is Amanda Morrissey, and welcome to another episode of Too Pretty to Be Unhappy. Today's topic is one that I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate to, unfortunately. Today we will be chatting about what it's like to date a narcissist and be affected by not only the manipulation, but the gaslighting of dating a narcissist and the love bombing of dating a narcissist. This is an episode that I've been thinking about wanting to do for a while, and I know how important it is because I do know and understand how much this affects so many of us in relationships. And we could go on for days about what it's like to date a narcissist. And there are so many different relationships that a narcissist can pop up from. So, it's not just romantic relationships, it's friendships, it's, family. Unfortunately, for some people, it's their mom, it's their dad, it's, all of these different people in your life and these different relationships that you have can be with a narcissist. And I would love to get into that further in different episodes. But for today, we are going to be focusing in on being in a relationship with a narcissist and how that can affect your mental health. There are tons of signs that were there for me in my most recent relationship. And I ignored them. I flat out ignored them. This was the spring of 2021. If you listen to the first episode about my mental health journey, I had just lost a very significant amount of weight for the wrong reasons. One of them was to find love. My mental health was not in the place that was healthy by any means. One of the effects of losing this weight was, when I lose weight, I'm going to fall in love. I'm going to, get a boyfriend, then turns into a fiance, then turns into marriage and kids and everything that I want. Everything that my friends are doing. This is going to be it. And I feel like we're going to go through the story. And a lot of it, I can admit it now, a lot of it is like, Amanda, what the fuck? These red flags were like just in your face, and I ignored them all. And it sounds so silly now, thinking back on the things that I allowed or I let slide. But it was because I mentally wasn't there. I was ignoring it because I just wanted it to work so bad. And I wanted that part of my life to begin. If I lose the weight, if I do all these things, then, your soulmate, your person will come and it will be amazing and you will fall in love and this, that, and the third. So before we get into it and before, during the episode, you're like, seriously, Amanda, like, I know. Like, I get it. Now looking back, I'm like, you dumbass. Like, what are you thinking? So let's get into that now. It's the spring of 2021. At this point, I have been alone, not in a relationship, for over 7 years. And at that point, you really start to think to yourself, like, okay, maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe the marriage, the lifelong partner, the kids, the white picket fence, the house, the everything, maybe that's just not in my cards. And that would be okay. And I started to think to myself, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. And then I'll never forget, I went to a friend's wedding. I remember I posted some pictures from it, and he slid right into the DMs. And I was a little bit taken aback. So this was someone I hadn't been in contact with in 10 plus years. We met probably 12 or 15 years prior. I was probably a freshman or a sophomore in high school. He was a junior or a senior in high school. And my sisters were friends with him and his friends and such. And we had met at some party and hit it off, but nothing really came of it. I was so young, and, he was young. We were in high school. Didn't really mean much. It was, nothing happened. But for a couple years, we stayed in touch, just like, cute, funny messages back and forth, whatever. And then we didn't talk for 12 or 15 years. He had messaged me on Instagram, and he had told me that he was moving back to the area. So he was out west for a while. It was nice. It was nice to hear from him. And I had I had never had a bad encounter with him or anything. And it was always really fun when we were younger. And so we started chatting. And the chatting moved from Instagram to texting, which was great. It started to become more and more and more consistent. And I really was feeling like we were connecting very quickly. We had connected when we were younger, and as I'm starting to see this connection form, I started in my mind romanticizing about it. And I was like, wow, like, this is it. This is what they told me. Like, he's back, and, I've done all this work on myself. He's back, and, we're going to be together, and this is what I've been waiting for. This is it. This is the moment. This is him. We had been chatting for a while, and I noticed that he wasn't asking to hang out, and I was like, that's really weird. So I was like, you know what, Amanda? Pull the trigger. Who says that men have to be the first one to ask you on a date? Take control of the situation. Let's go. So I asked him to hang out, grab a drink, whatever. Immediately, yes. Yes, absolutely. Let's go. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, cool. So maybe he is feeling the same way about this that I am. Our first date lasts 7 hours. It was incredible. You know that feeling when you don't want to leave, when neither of you want to leave? That's what it was like. We went from one place to the next, and we were just talking about, his last 10 years, where he's been, what it was like being out west. I told him all about, my travels, and, I went from Connecticut to Michigan. I was living in Manhattan. At this time, I was living in Stamford, but very frequently coming back home to the Hudson Valley, where he now lived. And he told me that he had come back to the area. He had moved back after all these years, 10 plus years, to be closer with his family and his nephews, and his brother was having kids, and he wanted to be closer back to his family. And I could understand that, because I was out in Michigan, and then I was there for a couple years, and my sister kept was having kids, and I felt like I was missing out, and I wanted to be closer to my nephews and my niece, and so I completely understood that. So we bonded on that, which was great. So after that first date, it was on. And we started immediately talking. Where would you want to live one day? What if we lived here? What if we moved to South Carolina? What if we had this shack on the beach? What if, sending each other things like, like Zillow listings and in all of these different places that we say that we would love to live. And it was fun, and it was cute, and it was at this point not as serious as now it's sounding. But it was one of those, fantasized, like, hey, listen, if we could live anywhere together, like, where would it be? Like, let's go to, Hawaii. We were sending listings for Hawaii or South Carolina, or like all of these great things, right? Meanwhile, now in my healthy mind, this was the beginning of what I now know as love bombing. It was starting to have conversations too early. The progression moved from 0 to 100. Now, we're having these conversations. We're talking all day, every day. But I'm noticing that he's not asking me to hang out again. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, what's going on? I keep putting the ball in his court to ask me to hang out, but it's not really happening. Yet we're talking about all of these things and we're making this connection and he's saying these things and I'm like, there's no way that you're not thinking the way that I'm thinking. Like, I started, like, am I crazy? Like, no. So I call him out on it. And I said, listen, I am feeling this progress further, but wondering what your thoughts are. What are you thinking? Are you on the same page as I am? What's going on? He then tells me that he had just gotten out of a relationship with someone. In my mind, I'm like, oh, like someone out west. Like, okay. And, he wasn't ready to take it there yet. But, told me how great I was and, how he had always thought and wished for this when we were younger and blah, 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 whatever. So I was like, you know what? I completely understand, but these conversations are progressing way too quickly for you to not be ready. So to protect myself, I'm just going to cut it off and say, listen, wish you all the best. We can still be friends, but like this type of conversation that we're having, like I'm not doing this because it was just setting myself up for failure and setting me up for heartbreak. He completely understood. He was like, nope, I totally understand. I get it. Okay. The week goes on and he keeps hitting me back up, whether it's on Snapchat or whatever. And I'm just confused. I'm like, I thought that you said you weren't ready. Like, what's the deal? And it eventually turns out that we hang out. He had said, listen, like, I could not stop thinking about you. I was miserable the whole week when we weren't talking and hanging out. And I would love to give this a go. I would love for us to keep getting to know each other and talking. And I think that pretty much it was fate that we have reconnected and that we should see this through. And so I was like, oh my God, yeah, no, I agree. But like, are you actually ready? And he said, he was like, yeah, no, I absolutely am. So during this conversation, it also came out that the ex who he had just broken up with or their relationship had ended was very local, and that he didn't move back here to be closer with his family and his nephews like he had told me. It was to be with her. Now this was the first red flag that I ignored. And I was sitting there, I'm like, okay. Like, because now we're starting to just put it all out there. Like, listen, let's put all of our baggage out there. Let's put everything out there just so that we're going into this with, like, honesty and transparency. And so he said, listen, she's here. She's around. Now, in my mind, I'm like, oh, this girl's out west. Like, great. Nope. Here. So I was like, okay. But he reassured me, no, he doesn't want her. And he would tell me, he told me these stories about her, about how toxic their relationship was and how badly he had wanted it to work with her. Viewing it from now a healthier lens, there's two sides to every story. And I was only getting his side. So that's the only side that I can tell, which I'm sure there was more to the story than what I was told. So he would tell me about how toxic things were and how, when he was living out west, she would go out and visit him and spend the whole time texting other people from the city and texting other guys. He just always felt like he was used, and it just sounded like a very toxic relationship that they had, and there was a lot of just like trauma bonding, and he was just always chasing her and wanting it to work with her. He told me they had decided to really try and make this work, and that he would come back to New York. He would pick up, leave his life out west. A week before he was due to be back, he quit his job. He got a new job here. She said, listen, I don't know that this is for me. I don't know what I want. I don't know that I want to be with you. And it was just, the whole thing just sounded very toxic. And, so he was obviously recovering from that. And then we connected. So all of this to say, Amanda, red flag. Ignored. I was like, oh, that's kind of pink. Oh, it looks a light shade of coral. Like, no. Red flag. First one that I ignored. Our relationship continued to progress. It was moving rather quickly. I was staying with him. He was living with his dad at the time. I was staying with him most of the time. He said, I love you, very early on. I said it back very early on, which was another tactic of love bombing and manipulation. So one night he calls me and he tells me, I have to tell you something. And I was like, all right, like, what's up? And he was like, listen, she showed up at my job today. She showed up at my job crying hysterically, making a scene, and telling me, she needs me back. She wants me back. She's been trying to, work on her issues and work on our issues and this, that, and the third. And that, just making a scene, crying. Now I'm like, all right, so this is a bigger issue than I originally thought. The fact that she's still so actively in your life. And I said, all right, well, what did you do? What did you say? And he was like, listen, I told her, you need to go. You can't do this here. This is inappropriate. If you ever expect us to have a relationship ever again, any type of friendship or anything, you need to leave right now. What? If you ever expect to have any type of friendship, no. Like, she's your ex and she's clearly still in love with you, and you are somehow, some way still protecting her. Obviously, I was upset. I was like, great, this girl is a constant issue now. From then on, every single day she was texting him. Every single day he was receiving a text. And I thought in my mind that because he was being so honest about it, that he was telling me about it, I was like, okay, he's picking me, he's choosing me, because he's at least telling me that she's hitting him up, begging for him back. But he's also not telling her, stop texting me. I'm asking him, what are you doing? She's continuing to text you because you're giving her some type of hope in your response. I go, number one, we're not responding anymore, or we shouldn't be responding anymore. I can't believe I have to even ask this. And number two, she wouldn't continue this if she wasn't getting some type of hope in a message back from you. So he would tell me that he felt bad. He felt bad. He felt like she wasn't in a place mentally where he could lay that kind of, message out there and that she would be okay. He was afraid what she would do. He was afraid of this, that, and the third. He was continuing to protect her. And he would tell me how he just felt so bad because he was letting her down, and that, she was so, the biggest part was that she was so involved in their friend group. And that if he were to say something like this to her and completely cut her out, that it would really negatively affect their friend group. I'm starting to believe it because I just wanted it to work so bad with him. But the truth is, he was continuing to protect her to keep her in his life because he didn't know that he was ready to let her go. And I should mention that at the beginning of our relationship, when I found out that she was around here, and when I found out that she was still around and involved, I said, listen, the moment that I feel like I am in competition with someone else, I'm out. I'm not doing this because you're not choosing me. I said, I will be done the moment that I feel in competition with anybody because you are my boyfriend. And I should not be made to feel like you're not choosing me when you should be choosing me every day that we're in this relationship. He would tell me I'm just not ready to, remove her from my life. And I'll never forget, we got into this massive fight one night. It was about her. And he told me that, he just wasn't ready to remove her from his life and that needs to be okay. And here's another red flag that I ignored. It ended up turning into me apologizing to him. I shouldn't have started this fight. I should be comfortable enough in our relationship that to know that how much he loves me and that, she's not an issue and that he doesn't have to completely remove her because he's choosing me every day. And I started to believe it. And I ended up apologizing. We were awkward the whole next day and we had a long drive somewhere and I'm sitting there in my feelings like, oh my God, why did you do that, Amanda? Why did you rock the boat? Right, and in trying to protect the peace with him, I was making my inner peace worse. I was condemning my inner peace by trying to protect the peace with him. What was I thinking? I wanted it to work so bad. I was so close. I was so close to what all of my friends had, to what everybody that I knew had, as far as, having someone that, loved them and a partner for life and having kids and all this kind of stuff. And I was believing everything that he was saying about keeping her in our lives because, he would do things like love bombing things, which is a manipulation tactic, such as he told my best friend and her now husband, I'm going to marry that girl one day. I'm going to marry her. And when we were all out to dinner and I walked away to the bathroom, she told me after, she's like, oh my God, he said, I'm going to marry that girl one day. I'm so in love with that girl. I'll never forget. He also, he said, I love you so quickly. And, he had an opportunity to go back out west for this amazing job. And it was a we thing. We were going to move out west. And, I thought to myself, he's choosing me in all of these things that he says. And, he asked me my ring size. I'm like, wow, no, like there's no way that he doesn't love me and he would be keeping her on a string as well because he keeps saying all these things. And what I realized was that his love bombing was a way to mask his indiscretions, his uncertainty. I almost feel like I didn't trust myself in this moment, and he knew that, and he preyed on that. It's like he knew what I needed to hear in this moment, and in those moments of doubt, when I would bring up very relevant, important things in our relationship that I was uncomfortable with, and these boundaries that I was trying to set by saying, listen, like, we need to stop responding. We need to treat this like a 5-year-old throwing a tantrum. You don't respond. You just let them have it, because by continuing to respond, this is what she wants. And he kept responding. What I learned from this is that actions prove who someone is. Words prove who they want to be. And that's what he was doing. I remember we were out one night at a bar, hanging with some of his work colleagues, and I had run into an ex on my way back from the bathroom. And you get a little startled. You get a little like, that was weird. And so I was a little off when I came back to the table, I was like, that was weird. And he was so upset by it, of my vibe after that, how I was just a little bit like, that was weird. And he was so offended by it and so upset that seeing my ex would cause, this emotion out of me and this and third. And he said, if I ran into her, I would be fine. There would be no issue. Yeah, because you never stopped talking, bruh. Like, later do I find out that he was projecting me running into my ex and the weirdness and the awkwardness of it, because he was actually doing that, because he was actually still talking to his ex. And now looking back, I'm like, wow, that was all projection. Because I don't speak to my ex. I don't speak to exes. That's just what it is. When you're done, we're done. Like, there's no need to keep in contact. And I realized that was a lot of projection, and that was another form of manipulation that was happening. I know that there were obviously, ton of red flags that I ignored. I'm sure that, there were more, like, he would never post me on social media. And I know that sounds kind of petty. It was in a weird way that he was avoiding it. And if that's something that's important to you, and, I know that social media isn't everything. I get that. And some people, feel very strongly about their privacy on social media and stuff. But this was just in a way that he was actively avoiding it. And so that made me feel inside like, all right, something's off, something's wrong. And so that was yet another red flag that I had ignored. But in all of this time, he was telling me, how much he loved me. Let's move out west. We're going to do this. What's your ring size? What's, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm so happy that we came back together. Like, all of this kind of stuff it was his manipulation tactic. It was his love bombing. It was his gaslighting that he was doing to me. And he was preying on the fact that I wanted this so badly. And him being in this confused state of mind between still wanting to be with his ex and continuing this relationship with me did not make it okay for him to move in on me, especially knowing my past. He knew that I hadn't been in a relationship for 7 years, and how tough it was for me to be vulnerable with him, and how tough it was for me to, truly accept this. And he did it anyway. He did these things anyway. He truly took advantage of the trust that I had in him. But that's what narcissists do. And because he was the good guy, the nice guy, it wasn't wildly toxic, angry fights like I had been so used to in the past with relationships, that I didn't even think to myself that I was being gaslit, that I was being manipulated, because he was such a good guy. He was the nice guy. He was the guy that I had been waiting for, and the one that was supposed to be it for me. That was really hard. That was really hard to understand and finally accept. I just kept having this feeling, this gut feeling. And when in your gut you think something's off and something's wrong, it most likely is. This wasn't my proudest moment, but you know what? We've all done it. Don't lie. You've done it. I went through his phone. I knew in my gut that something was wrong and that something was off. And I just didn't trust it. I didn't trust that he was telling her, stop texting me. I'm with Amanda. I want to be with Amanda. I don't want to be with you. I didn't trust that he was truly putting those words out there, because she kept coming back. She kept texting him, and she kept hitting him up and showing up. And so I went through his phone, and I found all the proof that I needed in the first 4 text messages between them. He said, he told her, I just have all this noise in my head and I just need some time to think through it and figure it out. Noise in your head? Noise? I'm noise. At this point, too, we were planning on moving out west together. We were like talking with his new job, and we were talking about what I could do out there and how that would affect my job. And he had just asked me for my ring size. Like, it was crazy. And I'm like, you're telling her there's noise in your head? These sound like pretty sure things to me. And I knew, I was like, this is it. I'm done. You're not coming back from this. So that was that. Later that day, I told him what happened. And here's the thing. He obviously played the victim and was so upset that I went through his phone. You don't trust me? Nah, man, I don't trust you. Like, of course not. Look at you. Look at all this stuff, this bullshit that you're spewing. Like, come on. And it killed me to do that. And I told him, I go, listen, you're not choosing me. You don't respect me. You don't respect this relationship. You weren't choosing me when you were texting her. You weren't choosing this relationship when you were telling her that you have noise in your head. I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this. I want to be with someone that chooses me every day. I want to be with someone who would do anything and everything to be with me and someone who would respect my boundaries. And someone who would never make me question my worth or this relationship. You shouldn't have to beg someone to treat you right. You can't force honesty. You can't force loyalty. You can't force any of that. And in my mind at this time, I was still so confused. I go, how could he have done this? He told me all of these things. He told me that he wanted to marry me. He told me he wanted to move, out west with me. He was breadcrumbing me. And I didn't see it up until this point because I really wanted it to work. And what I realized is that words not matching actions is manipulation. And not taking accountability for that is gaslighting. And that's what was happening. And it was awful. It sucked. Because as I said goodbye to him, I was saying goodbye to all of this hope that I had built up. All of this hope for our future, for the life partner, the support system, the getting married and having kids and getting a house and all of these things that I thought, oh, wow, this is it. After 7 or 8 years, this is it. Was just wiped away in a matter of minutes. And where I was at mentally at that time, it really did me in. And then even after that, he was manipulating me. He would hit me up on Snapchat and play songs that, we used to listen to and we used to love. Say these things, like thinking of you or missing you, or all of that is manipulation afterwards. It sucked. I said to myself, I go, there's no way that, and I'm not a religious person, but I was like, there's no way that God put this person in front of me who checks all the boxes, is the perfect guy, is the right guy. There's no, after all of the hardship, after all of the negativity, of the issues, of the bad, there's no way that God put this man in front of me who checked all of my boxes only for him to be another test. And he was. He was my test. That was a really hard pill to swallow. It was really hard to accept. There were feelings of rejection. There were, there was sadness. There was anger. I was so mad at him, at myself. I was so mad at myself for allowing this and for not thinking about, all of those red flags. That took a while to get over. And that was kind of the cherry on top that set me over the edge. with that mental break. But you know what? After that, I really realized that anything that is truly mine will never be able to be taken from me. I also realized, and what kind of brought me to this moment of acceptance, is that I wanted it to be him so badly until I realized that he didn't want it to be me. And that was a wild pill to swallow. Because I had this idea in my head. I had this romanticized version of this relationship. And I was allowing all of these things to slide with him, of not truly removing his ex or this toxic person from our lives, and just to keep the peace. What about my peace? What about my inner peace? And I wasn't thinking about that. And I had rose-colored glasses on, and I know that we all have, which is why I'm not afraid to put this out there. I know that we've all felt this way, and we've all had those rose-colored glasses. I also realized through this experience that you can't make someone love you by giving them more of something that they already don't appreciate. I was trying so hard to be this person that he would choose first, that I was losing myself in this relationship too. And I shouldn't have had to do that. And looking back now, it's so simple to think about, and it's so simple. When you're in this situation, it's hard to see past those rose-colored glasses. And it's hard to accept that something might not end the way that you want it to. I also went back to, these 5 points of this life coach put out, Rob Sturston's. It's how to take your power back after a betrayal. And that was really kind of my biggest thing, was I wanted to take my power back. Obviously the first step is to take full accountability. There were red flags and I ignored them. And that's number 1, is I ignored red flags. He didn't want to post me on social media. He wouldn't remove her from our lives completely. He told me he wasn't ready to completely remove her from his life. He just kept giving her hope, that one day they would have some type of friendship or something. And he kept making excuses for her, and he wasn't protecting or respecting my boundaries. So number 1 of taking this full accountability and taking my power back was I ignored the red flags. Number 2 was that I was so desperate for this situation to work out that I was willing to overlook some of those red flags. And I know that we've all done it. We've all ignored red flags, guys. So that's number 2 of that. I was so desperate for this to work out, to have that life that I had always dreamed of. And I thought that this was the start. And I was saying goodbye to that when I said goodbye to him. Number 3 was, and this is a hard pill to swallow, I was following my ego. And I feel like our ego plays into a lot of these toxic situations where I wasn't allowing myself to be the person that he didn't choose. My ego wouldn't allow it. If I had dropped my ego a bit and understood and seen the situation for what it actually was, that I was being manipulated and gaslit and love bombed, maybe it wouldn't have ended. It definitely would have ended, but maybe I would have been more prepared. Number 4 is that I set false expectations for people. For him specifically. When we started things, I had this idea in my head that this is going to be it. This is it. This is endgame. He was feeding me everything for me to have those expectations, let's be honest. But also I was setting this false narrative I was setting these false expectations up that, this is the only way that it can end, is that good and us at the end, and, this life that I always wanted, and, the kids and the marriage and the white picket fence and all this kind of stuff. So that would be number 4, is that I had set false expectations. And last but not least, I didn't follow my intuition. Guys, trust your gut. Follow your intuition. If it feels wrong, it's probably wrong. Of course, there are certain times where I overthink certain things and overthink situations, but I felt in my gut something's wrong, something's off. This isn't right. And I needed to know for myself. And here's the thing, if I hadn't gone through his phone, or I hadn't, looked myself, if I had asked, he would have lied. He'd been doing nothing but lying the entire time. So, of course he would have lied. If I had just trust my gut instead of allowing all of his behaviors, maybe I could have caught it sooner. I felt like after this relationship, and I feel like, a lot of us feel like after a relationship, we're looking for that closure. And if I've learned anything, at least for me in this situation particularly, closure was a joke. There was nothing that I could have said to him, or he could have said to me, that would have made that situation okay. But in that moment, you're dying for it. You want it so bad. Oh, closure. If I just say this, maybe, maybe he'll beg. Maybe he'll, want me, and, we can work this out or whatever. No. Closure is a joke. The only person that I needed an apology from, or that I needed to apologize to, was the person standing in the mirror looking back at me for allowing that behavior to go on for so long. After questioning my worth, after allowing this behavior in this relationship, allowing him to treat me that way, in taking that accountability and that responsibility for it, and for the people that I allow in my life and to treat me this way, I realized you can't keep dancing with the devil and wonder why you're still in hell. You need to take control of your life and remove these people. They shouldn't have access to you. And that's what I was doing. I was so sad. I was so upset. And even during the relationship, now looking back, I'm like, Amanda, were you really even that happy the whole time? All those nights that you went to bed and you were so sad or upset that he was still chatting with her, and, you knew that you were allowing your boundaries to be crossed and not respected, but you continued to allow it anyway. And that was it. I was dancing with the devil, and I wondered why I was still in hell. I was so upset, but I kept coming back to this quote from this life coach, Matthew Hussey. He said, "It's okay to be disappointed that they weren't the one, but please don't grieve them as if they were." And God, that hit. Once I realized that, I feel like I was really able to start my healing journey from this whole thing. As you can see along the journey now, I can look back on that relationship, and I can look back on that time in my life, and it seems pretty obvious now. It seems pretty obvious what was being done to me, and that, I was being manipulated and love bombed and gaslit the entire relationship. But when you're in that situation, guys, you're not seeing it. You're looking at everything through rose-colored glasses. And I wanted to tell my story because I do, unfortunately, think a lot of you can relate to it. And that we've all been there, especially when, we're young and in love and in this infatuation. I don't even know if I could call it love. It was definitely more of an infatuation. And especially if you've ever been in a situation where when you've been alone for so long and you're not really sure that that part of your life will ever be for you, or, you'll ever find someone that can be your life partner and you can have, this life that you've dreamed of. You have to always remember to put yourself first. Protect your peace. Protect your boundaries. Protect all of this work that you've done for yourself. And as I said, that might have been the cherry on top for me of what, kind of kickstarted this whole mental health journey. I might have spent 7 years alone or 8 years alone before him, but I didn't fully understand what it meant to be alone and be okay with it. And that's what I'm learning now. And I look back and I want to tell Amanda of spring of 2021 that I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I allowed that to go on for so long, and I'm sorry that I allowed her to be treated that way, and that she deserved better. And all of you deserve better. It's very tough, but don't ignore the warning signs. Don't ignore the red flags. If something feels off, it's probably off. And just remember to keep choosing yourself. See your worth. See that you deserve to be treated and loved the way that you want. You need to find someone, and I realize that I need to find someone that loves me the way that I want to be loved. And so do you. You deserve that. You deserve someone who protects your peace, not breaks it down. You deserve someone who validates your feelings and doesn't make you feel crazy. You deserve someone who is loyal and honest, and someone that chooses you every day. And I have faith that that will happen for me. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. This was episode 3. I'm so happy that you all are here and that we're taking this healing journey together. If you could do me a big favor and like and subscribe and comment. If you could please share, this podcast with your family and friends, maybe some people who you think it could relate to. We would really appreciate it. I would love to know what you guys thought of the episode. Please leave comments. Let me know. Ask questions. Super happy to answer any questions. And please don't forget, I'm too pretty to be unhappy. And so are you.